What's happening, everybody? This is Ali Drafter back with a brand new video. In today's video, I wanted to talk to you guys about some of the things that are happening when it comes to your credit repair campaigns that you may not be aware of, and perhaps some of the things that you need to be aware of in order to be as efficient as possible to get the outcomes that you're looking for when it comes to your personal credit journey. By far, there's a couple of videos that I've released. The past few videos are specifically designated to give you tools and instructions on how to maximize the campaign journey that you're going through when it comes to fixing your personal credit. This is very critical if you're looking to get essentially leverage over the scenario, have more control and how the outcome is going to be when it comes to fixing your personal credit. So I want you to listen very carefully to the following things, because these are some of the steps that you need to kind of pay attention to, because they may be ignored if you're not very strategic with it. And at times what's happening is a lot of individuals out there who are fixing their personal credit land on these situations and circumstances, and they don't know what to do with it when time comes. So I'm going to give you some strategies on how you can leverage this information and knowledge to the best of your ability to go ahead and create the outcomes that you're looking for when it comes to your personal credit. First step that we want to discuss and talk about is the idea that when you're essentially sending credit repair letters to your credit bureaus, that you think that you don't necessarily need to include all the items and you got to do it a few at a time. That's a myth that I want to kind of demystify, because the reality of the matter is you can actually do as many things and negative items on that letter as you want. You can add 1,000 things, you can add 5 things, you can add 3 things. It doesn't really matter. The quantity of information that you're including on your credit repair letters, you can add as many things as you want. And this is important because a lot of us misinterpret that. We think that, hey, to be as efficient with the credit bureau so that they don't ignore us, and we're kind of scared of that we try to minimize the amount of information that we include in our credit reports. And the reality is, you shouldn't hold yourself back from including all the necessary things that you need in order to get the best possible outcome out there, especially when it comes to your credit. So include as many items as you want, specifically if it's listed properly. What you want to also do is you want to be able to make sure that the items that you're listing have a very specific reason as to why they're being listed there. There's a lot of issues that I've seen in the past where a lot of people come up with a lot of negative items, and it's a very generic dispute structure. You can't be generic. If you're generic, what's going to happen is you might not get an outcome. It's not very specific, and they have the right to refuse an investigation simply because there's not enough context for them to say, hey, we understand the reason why you're disputing. We understand exactly what the reason is, and we understand exactly where we didn't follow protocol, so we're going to go ahead and make that adjustment. If you don't have a reasoning behind your disputes process or the items that you're listing and how and why they should be disputed, then the shortfall there is that you have no control over the outcome, and now the credit bureaus control the outcome, and they can simply refuse to do anything. So make sure that, number one, you're listing as many items as that are negative as possible. Number two, make sure you're very specific when it comes to your dispute resolution, because specificity is going to get you the outcomes that you're looking for. The third, and one of the more important points, I think, beyond just these two, is that have a predetermined timeline in which you are willing to wait until before you start communicating with them again. What I see a lot of people do is after the 45-day mark, they think, hey, let me just wait another 15 days or maybe 20 days, maybe they're going to get back to me. That's an assumption that you're making and you're not 100% sure. So for that specific reason, I'm going to encourage you guys that if you're seeing that the timeline is hitting the 30-day mark, and according to, hopefully you send certified mail, so that return receipt, the date on which they receive it, that's when the ticking starts, right? So that means the clock starts then. You put in your Google Calendar or Outlook or whatever the case that, hey, there's a 30-day timeline. After 30 days from that specific day when they receive the mail, I should put a notification that I should check up with the credit bureaus. And assuming by that time you receive some letters back, but if you haven't, then don't hesitate to pick up the phone and see where they're at, because you have the right to actually get information within that 30-day cycle. And this is important because you would have logged your activity in journaling concept and say, look, I wrote this down, and if you were to ever create an affidavit, and what a simple affidavit is a sworn testimony that you've done everything in your power, that you're being truthful, that you wrote all the information down and the events of those information, exactly when they happened, the date, who you spoke to, and so on and so forth. It's an activity log that protects you if you're ever going to go through the avenue of suing the credit bureaus, and you need this information because this is critical. So I want you to think about that, right? So after that, well, not after, but from the moment they receive the mail and you got confirmation, 30 days out, put a notification. And once you know that they haven't complied to that 30-day rule, you got to pick up the phone and call the credit bureau, see what's going on, because that is the deadline. Right? Unless otherwise you've added information on top of your disputes during that time of your campaign, then they have a legitimate reason to have another 15 days by permissible allowance. Like basically the credit bureaus are allowed another 15 days if additional information was added to your initial disputes, which I'm assuming it hasn't been. So that 30-day timeline is very strict. The other times that they can have up to 45 days is if you pull your credit reports from annualcreditreport.com, which is a website that you get all your free credit reports from on a yearly basis. And obviously due to COVID, you can get it on a weekly basis for the time being. So you should definitely take advantage of that if you didn't know yet. But that's one of those considerations. So don't wait beyond the 30 days. And if you're seeing it's 45 and then just anticipating and hoping and crossing your fingers that sometime soon the credit bureaus are going to somehow comply and all of a sudden everything's going to be fine. The reality is it's not going to be fine, and it's your duty to make sure that they're complying, and you need to pick up the phone and give them a ring because you need to know exactly where they're at, because this is critical information. This we're dealing with is a obstacle in your way to get some financing or whatever you need to do that is credit related, so negligence cannot be accepted here. So that's the third piece that I wanted to say. Don't wait beyond that 30-day timeline, especially if you haven't added additional information to your disputes and so on and so forth. So pick up the phone and obviously like give them a ring. The fourth piece I want to say to that is, I know we talked about this quite a bit and said, look, simultaneously, you guys need to be doing some financial credit activities that are outside of just removing the negative items. This is the stacking mechanism. This is, basically establishing and harvesting more relationship with your existing creditors. That requires a little bit of money. Obviously, you need to pay down your balances. But one of the biggest things I would say is the fourth point is understand and focus and, put all your eggs on the aspect of payment history establishing. Because if you can do that very successfully, what's going to happen is you're going to get automatic credit bumps, you're going to get favorable rates, the creditors are going to be happier, and you're going to get more funding. Ultimately, what's going to happen is because of the result of aggressive pay downs and aggressive levels of financial activity on your payment history, your credibility goes incredibly high. But the biggest factor of credit scoring, which is your payment history, is being exercised. Ultimately, it'll increase your limits, which means your utilization gets exercised. That's 30%, right? And that means the two biggest components within your credit report and the credit scoring model are being exercised at the same time. And therefore, underwriting is going to be a lot more lenient. You're going to get more funding, and you're going to get funding easier than more complicated, right? So that is what we're trying to focus on, because that is the goal of the whole process of establishing consumer credit, personal credit, right? So that's the fourth point. So the fifth and final point I want to say of the five, parts here is that once you start to exercise those credit muscles and do what you got to do, is having a very balanced way of monitoring and looking at your credit on a regular basis. This is critical because a lot of people, what they do is, they get good credit and then they stop monitoring because they think, hey, everything's fine now. The issue is, you may be successful in removing a debt collector. You may be successful in removing a late payment or a charge off. But at any given point, a creditor has the right to go ahead and assign or sell a debt to a third-party collection agency or a person or a company that is willing to take on that balance sheet and review the information and pursue you on a financial level. And by doing so, they can also report to the credit bureaus. So constant monitoring of your credit reports is very critical because it helps you stay apprised of what's going on with your credit score, what's going on with your personal situation. Are there negative items that were added? What are some of the things that are not adding up? Monitoring your payment history, make sure that everything was recorded on time. So to maintain that consistency, you need to monitor that. And by monitoring your personal credit on a regular basis, only then do you have control over the outcome in terms of underwriting and what are some of the potential avenues of funding that you can go ahead and obtain, hopefully, right? So I just wanted to shoot this video up for you guys and make sure that you guys got the context of the 5 points just to help you establish a little bit better in terms of a knowledge base on pursuing your personal credit journey more efficiently. And hopefully this helped you guys out. If it did, don't forget to destroy that thumbs up button. Go ahead and leave a comment below this video on what other topics would you guys like me to cover, given that we have covered quite a bit on this channel when it comes to consumer credit knowledge. I don't repeat a lot of stuff. I don't copy about other credit card information and all sorts of stuff because I think that knowledge base is already available for you guys. But if there are certain unique things that is not being talked about credit itself, and perhaps some questions you might already have on some of the topics that are being discussed out there, and to get clarity on that, by all means, leave a comment below. I'll be more than happy to create videos around those to help you get the clarification that you're seeking. And with that said, this is definitely your guide and mentor, Ali Turfter. I'll catch you guys on the next video. Bye for now.